I came home from a party expecting the same quiet house and the same routine, only to have 6 simple words from my son turn everything I thought I knew about myself upside down. Stay with me. This one surprised even me. Quick question for everyone watching. Which cities in the United States are you joining from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. I love knowing where you are. And it makes this feel less like me talking to a camera and more like a room full of neighbors sharing a late-night story. The door clicked behind me, and the world I'd been part of for 4 hours, the laughter in the living room, the clinking of glasses, the soft jazz someone had put on, folded away like a page. Outside, the night smelled of wet pavement and a distant fryer on the corner. I hung my coat, heels hanging from my fingers, and for a moment I let the scent of party perfume cling to me, the way one hangs onto a conversation that felt good at the time. The hallway light was dim. Only the lamp by the stairs was on, casting a tired pool of yellow over the runner. Larry's truck was in the driveway where I always left it when he'd gone out for a long day at the office, and I assumed he'd already come in. He often did these late evenings where he slipped into bed hours before me and pretended the world outside our bedroom door wasn't slightly off-kilter. My shoes slid mute on the hardwood, and I padded into the kitchen, rolling my shoulders, thinking a cup of tea might settle the buzz in my head. That's when I saw him, Ethan, heaping up. He'd been there, a silhouette at the kitchen table, a single lamp over him, shadow carving his face with a soft, patient light. He wasn't the little boy who used to climb into my lap and ask for just one more story. He was taller than me now, his jaw shadowed with the first stubborn signs of a beard, his hair a bit too long at the back like he hadn't been to the barber in a while. His laptop was closed, a mug with cold coffee beside it, and a stack of papers spread like a small, earnest map between his hands. He looked up, and for a beat I only saw the years. Every birthday candle, every scraped knee, every late-night fever that had kept me by his side. It's a strange, impossible feeling to be washed by memory in a single glance. My heartbeat did something uneven. I was 36 when he was born. 36 feels far in the rearview when your son is 20 and looks at you like a person. "You're home," he said. His voice was steady, a little dry at the edges, as if he'd practiced not letting things wobble. Not a reproach, not a welcome either, just a fact. "Yeah," I said. "The gala ran late. You still up?" He curled his fingers around his mug like the heat would anchor him. I wanted to be up. Thought maybe we'd talk. I set my coat on the back of a chair and moved to make a cup of tea more out of habit than need. The kettle clicked on. The house hummed with its usual sounds, the refrigerator low and patient, the clock above the stove ticking in the only voice that never rushed. Ethan didn't move to the cereal box or the fridge. He stayed where he was, hands folded, looking like someone waiting for the right moment to step off the curb. "You okay?" I asked, the well-worn automatic question. Mothers develop it like a reflex, a weather vane that swivels at the first sign of cloud. He smiled without joy. "I'm fine, Mom. He paused, and the pause was not empty. It was full of everything I hadn't noticed. The nights he'd come home later and not told us where he'd been, the bills he'd slipped under my plate, the quiet ways he had learned to carry his own weight. "I need to tell you something." The kettle clicked awake, and I poured with hands that knew the choreography of countless nights. I set a mug in front of him, but he didn't take it. "What is it?" I asked, and somewhere inside me, an old, fierce instinct said, "Protect, fix, remedy." It's amazing how fast those instincts arrive, like family still lives in your marrow, even when your child has his own keys. Ethan sighed and leaned back, the chair groaning a small agreement. "Do you remember last month when I dropped out of the theater class?" He asked it like it was a small detail, but his eyes were an ocean. "When I told you I was tired and needed to focus on school?" I did remember. I remembered the way he'd come home late, excuse in hand, and how Larry and I had offered quiet nods and a cooked meal while the house held its breath. "Yes," I said, "you were swamped with calculus. You said you couldn't balance it all." He nodded. I lied. The floor shifted. For a second I only saw the whorls of the wood under my feet and the lamp's soft halo. "You lied." The word landed between us and settled like dust. "I told you what I thought would make things easier," he said. "I said it would be better if I quit to focus on classes. But that wasn't the real reason. I was avoiding something. I was avoiding telling you that I wasn't sure who I wanted to be, and I thought if I just stopped doing anything else, I could buy time to figure it out." The confession came out like a soft, small thing, honest and fragile. I felt the edges of it press into me. Not because it was dramatic, but because the shape of it fit into a puzzle I didn't know I'd been missing. The boy who had hidden under blankets to avoid storms had grown into a young man who was learning the language of his own doubts. "I'm proud of you for saying that," I said before I could stop myself. My voice sounded thin in the kitchen. He shook his head. "No, that's not what I wanted to tell you." His hands found the table, fingers splayed, an anchor. "I wanted to say this. I see you, not as Mom, but as you." The words sliced the air. "What do you mean?" I heard the tremor in my own voice, the old motherly suspicion that every significant conversation would be a mirror forcing you to look. He swallowed. "You do so much for everyone. You're always the one who notices the small things. The neighbor's broken gate, the smell of rain on the carpet, the way a song can make Larry laugh like he's 20 again. You make the house a home. But I started to notice something else lately. You smile sometimes the way someone smiles in a photograph, pretty, a little posed. And at the party tonight, you laughed, but your eyes looked like they were trying to get somewhere else." It sat with me. I could have told him it was nothing. I could have folded it away with excuses. Work stress, the long marriage years, parties that were just filler. But he was watching me with the kind of kindness that only comes when someone loves you enough to hold your truth without breaking it. "You've always been Mom," he continued, "but you're also Nicole. You used to say that name in the mirror when you were getting ready for dates, like it belonged to someone who believed things could still surprise her. I don't know why I never realized how important that was, to see you as your own person, with dreams that aren't only for us." I felt something unspool inside me, slow as a well-loved ribbon. I hadn't thought about being called Nicole in years. My name had softened into titles: Mom, wife, nurse, mother of a soccer champion. They were all who I had chosen to be fiercely and gladly, but in the quiet times, the hours between bedtime stories and mortgage payments, I had let Nicole be a background character. "What are you saying?" My voice was softer now, less defensive, more curious. He stood up then, the air in the kitchen shifting with the motion. He came around the table and placed his hand gently on my shoulder, an action that carried with it the weight of years where I had been the one to comfort him. "I'm saying you don't have to keep making excuses for things you want. I'm saying I think you're allowed to want things that have nothing to do with me or Larry. I'm saying I love you whether you make the casserole or whether you go out and do something that scares you." His fingers were warm. "And I want to be the son who learns to see you as Nicole. I don't want to only see you in the light of what you do for us." The shot of feeling that ran through me was complex, grief for the parts of me I thought were lost, and relief that someone had offered me permission I hadn't known to ask for. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes before I could file them away. It's absurd the way a single phrase can make your heart rearrange itself. I began to think how light it would be to have my name called as if it were a person who might take a walk at sunrise, not just someone who made sure other people ate their vegetables. "I'm not saying I want to run away," Ethan said quickly, as if anticipating my worry. "I'm asking you to be honest with yourself. To tell Larry, to tell me, what you actually want. If you need help, I'll help. If you want to try something new, classes, travel, even just a weekend away by yourself, I'll support it. I don't want you to keep apologizing for existing." He laughed a little at the end, a small, surprised sound, like someone who'd finally found the right words after fumbling in the dark. It was the kind of laugh that implies humility and bravery at once. I looked up at him and saw not a child but a man who had learned empathy from somewhere, maybe from the struggles he'd watched, maybe from his own late-night worries. It felt like being seen for the first time in years, and the sight of it made me ache and also feel oddly elated. I thought of Larry upstairs, the steady, gentle man who loved me in ways both grand and ordinary. I thought of the years of small compromises that had built our life, the mortgage, the children's tuition payments, the dinners where everyone was heard. "I don't know how to be that person anymore," I admitted. The confession sounded ridiculous and honest. "I don't know how to be Nicole in front of Larry, who has always been used to me as the background. He might think I'm being reckless." Ethan squeezed my shoulder. "Then it's a good thing we don't have to do it alone. Start with small things. Say your name out loud when you look in the mirror. Tell Larry how you felt at the party. Test the waters. If you falter, I'll be here to remind you it's okay to sink and then swim." I opened my mouth to protest, to say that I was the adult, that I should be the one to steady him, but he shook his head. "You don't have to carry everything," he said. The simplicity of it was almost a rebuke, but the kind I needed. "Let us carry some of it with you." Outside, a car passed, and the sound of a late-night radio drifted by like a promise. Larry's door was closed upstairs, the house holding a soft fatigue. The tea had grown cold on the counter, forgotten. A tiny bell of steam rose from Ethan's mug like a faint signal. In that small kitchen under the lamp's watchful eye, something turned. Not an earthquake or revelation that rearranged our lives overnight, but a tiny hinge swinging open, a space where my name could be heard again. When Ethan left the kitchen to go back to his room, he paused in the doorway and looked at me with a steady, earnest face. "Call me if you want to talk about anything," he said. "And Mom." He smiled then, a little sheepish, a little brave. "Call me Ethan, not just Kiddo, when you want to. Sometimes people need reminders that names stick to people, not roles." I laughed, a wet sound that felt like a release. "Okay, Ethan," I said. The word felt warm on my tongue, and when I said it I felt it tether a part of me I had left floating for far too long. I made my tea again because the first cup had gone cold, and I sat at the table with the lamp keeping me company. Outside the night breathed, and the backyard pine trees swayed their slow, implacable dance. Upstairs, the house slept, and for the first time in a long time I found myself thinking of Nicole not as a memory, but as a small, possible plan. There was a long way to go. Conversations to be had with Larry, fears to face, practicalities to sort. But when a son tells you, at 20 years old, that he can see the woman behind the title and that he wants her to claim herself, it breaks something open in a way that no party or polite compliment ever could. I stood and wiped my hands on a towel as if to steady them. I could feel the weight of years on one shoulder and a surprising lightness on the other. The night felt like an invitation, not a demand. I climbed the stairs slowly, the wooden steps remembering the footsteps of children and late-night laundry runs, and paused at the doorway to Larry and my bed. For a minute I simply listened to the small sound of the house, the clock still ticking, a soft susurration that felt like a place between then and now. I didn't have a plan yet, but for the first time that night, standing in the dim glow, I said my name to myself, just to see how it sounded. Nicole. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds, painting stripes across the kitchen floor where I had slept. Not literally, but in that sense where your mind lingers in a place and the body follows like a latecomer. I woke before Larry, which was unusual, and as I moved quietly to the kitchen, I realized the house smelled of yesterday's rain and freshly brewed coffee. It was a domestic harmony I had always loved, but this morning it carried a new weight. I was thinking in Nicole first, Mom second. I poured a cup of tea, and the steam spiraled up like a soft signal to the universe, the way it had done the night before. I sat at the table, hands wrapped around the mug, and thought about Ethan. That conversation had changed something inside me. I could feel it. Not a sudden blaze of insight, but the slow, undeniable warmth that comes from being recognized in a way you hadn't allowed yourself to hope for. Larry appeared in the doorway, hair mussed, a sleepy smile on his face. He paused when he saw me, something in my expression making him blink and lean on the doorframe. "Morning," he said softly. "Tea?" "I'm already on it," I replied, lifting my mug. The words felt lighter than usual, a signal I was testing my voice. He came closer, hands brushing the edge of the counter, and sat opposite me. "You look different," he said, his brow furrowed in curiosity more than suspicion. "Late night?" I nodded, letting the warmth of tea fill the silence. "Talked to Ethan," I said, and watched him process the simple statement. Larry has always had a slow, thoughtful mind. He doesn't jump to conclusions. That patience, the kind that had steadied me for 20 years, now felt like both a safety net and a challenge. "About what?" he asked gently, leaning back, willing me to speak. "About me," I said, and it was startling to hear myself frame it that way. Not about him, not about the house, not about the kids, just me. About being Nicole, not just Mom. About noticing that I've been tucked into titles and routines for so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to actually want things for myself. Larry's eyes softened, and he reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine in the kind of touch that had comforted me more times than I could count. "I see," he said slowly, like he was unpacking a weight. "And you're ready to tell me." I nodded. "Yes. And I want you to understand that this isn't about leaving anyone behind. It's about stepping forward, for me, for us. I want us both to grow, even in ways that scare us." Larry leaned back, exhaling through his nose. There was a moment of silence where the sun warmed the tiles between us, and then he smiled, that slow, genuine smile that comes from someone who sees the depth of your heart and trusts it. "Nicole," he said carefully, letting the name hang between us. "I like hearing that." It felt like permission, though I didn't need it. But Larry's acceptance, his willingness to meet me as Nicole rather than only as Mom or his wife, unfastened a subtle tension I hadn't realized I was carrying. We talked for hours, quietly over breakfast, the soft clink of spoons against mugs punctuating our conversation. I told him about my longing for small adventures, things that didn't disrupt the family but allowed me to feel like my own person again. Maybe a weekend workshop, maybe a short class in something I'd always been curious about, a day spent just wandering with a camera in hand. Larry didn't laugh, didn't minimize, didn't even hesitate. He simply said, "Then let's do it. I'll figure out a way to cover the house while you go. I want you to be happy, Nicole." I felt a lump in my throat, the kind that arrives unannounced when the weight of years and love and understanding suddenly aligns in one gentle gesture. And just like that, the world tilted slightly, not in chaos, but in a perfect, almost imperceptible shift that made space for something new. Later that day, Ethan came down for lunch. He had a grin that spoke of secrets and satisfaction. "How's Mom?" he asked, and I laughed, a free sound that had been scarce lately. "I'm Nicole today," I said, and he laughed too, the sound lighter than before, carrying the warmth of approval and shared understanding. We sat together, a mother and son side by side, not just in the roles we had always held, but in recognition of each other's humanity. When the afternoon sunlight stretched across the living room, I found myself thinking about the party from the night before, the laughter, the the conversations, the fleeting interactions with neighbors and colleagues. Everything seemed brighter now, sharper, but softer too, like the edges of life had been sanded down just enough to make room for feeling. I realized that all the little compromises I had made over the years had been necessary, yes, but they had also obscured the Nicole that still existed, and she deserved acknowledgement. Evening arrived, and I decided to take a short walk around the block. Larry and Ethan waved from the porch, both giving me space yet offering a presence that was reassuring. I moved slowly, breathing in the cool air, feeling the pulse of the neighborhood in its quiet, familiar rhythm. The world felt expansive, not threatening, a contrast to the constricted life I had been living within my own good intentions. It was on that walk that I understood something fundamental. Life's unexpected conversations, the small moments of honesty, have the power to shift everything. A few words from a son, an understanding glance from a husband, and suddenly the boundaries of a life can expand to make room for the person you've almost forgotten to be. Nicole existed, not in opposition to my roles, but alongside them, a parallel thread of identity that was waiting to be woven into the tapestry of our shared life. By the time I returned home, the kitchen light was on, the soft hum of the refrigerator, and the gentle ticking of the clock grounding me in the ordinary miracle of family. Larry joined me there, his presence a quiet assurance. We made dinner together, chopping vegetables, sharing small jokes, and the rhythm felt like a song we had